Yo, 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 yo. Hello, everybody. I need to change that intro because it sounds horrible, but I haven't been able to come up with anything recently. So, we're gonna have to stick with it. Regardless, a pillow here again with a brand new pillow talk. Today, I'm going to be talking about some of my favorite things on this planet trans people, and also idiots on Twitter, and dunking on them, and watching them getting dunked on so hard, and watching them cope. Love it so much, gotta love it, it's beautiful. So, I might or might not accompany this video with some Guilty Gear gameplay footage because I'm currently really bad at Guilty Gear, and despite playing and actually really liking Bridget's moveset, I'm not up to snuff necessarily, so if it is gameplay footage, it's most likely just gonna be me, like, practicing the game, so bear with me. With that being said, Bridget is a character in Guilty Gear she should be flashing on screen right about now, but she is a character who has existed for well over a couple of decades now, and she was very recently confirmed in her release in Guilty Gear Strive, the newest Guilty Gear game, to be trans. She had a whole story arc about it, spanning across multiple games. Basically, in short, Bridget was born into a town in the filthy country of England, or at least Guilty Gear's equivalent. Basically, what would generally be considered England in our world. But Bridget was born into this town, and this town had a very big superstition about twins of the same gender being born, and she was a twin. Two beautiful, bouncing baby little guys were born. But Bridget got gendered as a woman by her parents and raised as such due to the superstition of the town. Bridget's entire story arc was essentially, in the earlier games, her fighting to be recognized as a male to try to get rid of the stigma against twins of the same gender being born in this town. And you come up to Guilty Gear Strive, and she's pretty much solved this issue. This is no longer a superstition in that town, but she doesn't necessarily feel complete. She goes on a little bit of a character arc, and as it turns out, she is revealed to be trans. Bridget didn't necessarily connect with being masculine. She was a girl. She felt that in her heart, and she decides to transition, becoming the first cis trans woman in media, which was explained in this funny Twitter thread, which I can hopefully flash up on screen, because I am going to try to find it again. I thought it was very funny, and a little quaint. Funny in a very queer way. So, of course, since then you had a lot of weeaboos and people on the general political right, the gamer spectrum, being quite angry over Bridget's recent reveal of being trans, trying to deny it and saying that it was a part of the bad ending of the game, which there are no bad endings in arcade mode. You just kinda, you lose. They'd been going on this bent for about the past month since Bridget had been released in Guilty Gear Strive as a DLC character, and since her story arc was revealed to come to this new conclusion outside of the ones that had been reached in the previous games about her relationship to her town, the place where she was born. These people have been pretty much denying and coping and saying, no, Bridget is not a woman, she's not trans, etc., etc., etc. They had chalked it up to a mistranslation, woke propaganda, people trying to force Westernism on Japan, which is just mired in so many dog whistles and odd ideas that I can't even begin to explain how bad that notion is. People even went so far as to say that, no way would a Japanese developer make a character in their game trans. Which is why recently, with an interview with one of the developers of Guilty Gear Strive, if I am correct, the creator of Guilty Gear in general, he both revealed that Bridget, yes, indeed, is actually intended to be trans, and no, this is not a result of a bad ending. Bridget is just trans, and these people really have nothing to argue against. Another win for the trans community in Brisket as a whole. I say this all to say that quite frankly, this is a big win, not only for representation, but also for revealing the fact that these people on Twitter are quite stupid and very much so infantilize Japan and act like queer people don't exist in Japan. So I'm going to take the time that I have left in this video to talk a little bit about queer people in Japan. This is off the top of my head. I actually don't script pillow talks, which is why you may occasionally hear an or from me, because I'm pretty much off the top of my head. I might have some pointers occasionally to give myself, but these really aren't scripted. So, I'm going to talk to you about some things that I know about being queer in Japan. Firstly, gay marriage is not respected in Japan as a constitutional right. There are some cities in Japan, some regions in general in Japan, that do recognize civil unions, but as a whole, gay marriage is not legalized in Japan, which is a huge issue that Japanese queer people do have to face and have been fighting against very recently. The reason why gay marriage isn't allowed in Japan is due to a technicality in the constitution of Japan that's just been upheld over years, wherein marriage was quite literally pretty much defined as a union between the two sexes, I believe is the way it was worded in the constitution. And due to that fact, gay marriage isn't allowed in Japan on a technicality. It's not due to religious bigotries, as far as I can tell. It's more so upholding the social order that's been set before, and also upholding this constitution, because by changing gay marriage laws, it would effectively be undermining the current Japanese constitution, and they don't want to do that for some reason, despite the fact that gay marriage has pretty wide support in Japan. Now, I'm talking about Japan, of course, because that's where Guilty Gear was developed. As well as this, the plight of transgender people in Japan is particularly egregious, with transgender people having to be, in many cases, sterilized in order to even get their birth markers changed on their birth certificates. Many trans people in Japan are not allowed to adopt or have children. Many of them don't even have their gender recognized by the legal system. That is a major issue in Japan that, again, queer people in Japan have been advocating against and fighting to get changed in order to support themselves. This notion that queer people do not exist in Japan is primarily, I'm not even going to say primarily, it is entirely propagated by right-wing dipshits who believe that Japan is this ultimate, cool, conservative, nice, socially homogenous country that doesn't have any issues, yada yada yada. And these people 9 times out of 10, they hate queer people in the West too. This isn't a protecting Japan thing. It's never a protecting Japan thing. They don't know anything about Japan. They don't know anything about the internal structures or issues present in Japan. The fact of the matter is, the reason why these people want to rail against Bridget so hard speaks to a wider issue in their perceptions of queer people and trans people in general. Do not believe them whenever they try to say that Bridget isn't trans, or that it's a mistranslation, or that it wasn't intended by the developers, or that it's just a Western lens being placed over it, because it isn't true. The developers intended Bridget to be trans. She is a trans character, and nothing can stop that. These people have lost, and they have to cope, and they have to sieve. Bridget is trans. Trans people exist in Japan. Queer people exist in Japan, and they ought to have their rights respected, protected, and propagated by their country. I might or might not be able to include some resources, maybe even some donation links in the description of this to queer rights organizations in Japan and across the globe, but genuinely, if you want to donate to help support trans causes, I suggest you do the research yourself. If I include some, I will pop up on the screen right now that I put them in the description, and I will have those in the description box below. Queer people in Japan deserve rights, just as anyone else deserves rights, and we need to fight for their rights, collectively, because queer people do no good whenever we're alone. We can't be alone in this fight for our rights, whether it be in the United States, in the United Kingdom, in France, in countries like Saudi Arabia or Iran, in in South America, in Japan, etc. We don't have to be alone, and we shouldn't be alone, and we should support each other. With that being said, I've been a pillow. If you like me, you can follow me on my Twitter down in the description below. My DMs are open, so feel free to DM me, have a conversation, request a video, maybe even ask me a personal question like what my favorite food is. I don't know. We can talk. I'm perfectly fine with it. As well as just like, subscribe, hit that bell icon. Make sure to share. I'm trying to get my watch hours up so I can monetize later. Make sure to share with people that might like my content. In order to get my watch hours up by getting my views up. With that being said, I love you all. I've been a pillow. Bridget is trans. Love brisket. I am out.